Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for December 20th, 2017. 5 days until Santa comes. But I know, right? But as yesterday, Santa comes early, but this time is for Nashville fans. Today, it will be announced in Nashville that Santa Claus gives a big $200 million worth of a club to the city of Nashville, to the state of Tennessee. Newton Dominey, we have you on the line, president of the Roadies, an independent supporters club to support what could be 10 SC or Nash Bridges FC. Newton, good morning.
Hey guys, what's going on? How are you?
Good. Probably not as good as you today. For the record, my favorite suggested name is 10SC, which I think is brilliant. But
that's amazing.
Nonetheless,
I heard that. I heard that brought up on. I think it was on Jason Davis's show last night. That's pretty creative. I'm pretty partial to Nashville SC myself. I got to be honest.
It'll probably be something like that. But we can dream of a good pun. Let's just start here. I mean, look. It's not 99.9% certain that we're going to have the announcement today. Do you have any worries that this is anything other than Nashville winning this expansion bid?
I mean, I don't know. It would be maybe like the biggest heel job in the history of professional sports if the commissioner of MLS, Don Garber, and the governor and the mayor and all the dignitaries showed up and said, "Sorry, guys,
we're going to Detroit. Sorry, guys."
Right. We wanted to come here to tell you that we're going to Detroit. Yeah, so I've got a pretty good feeling about it. We've got a favorite player that we're hoping to sign for our USL team, Martin Galvao, and we're speculating that maybe that Don Garber's showing up to announce his signing. But I think we know what's going on today. So.
Fair enough. I mean, the only caveat I'll give you, the 0.1% is that big announcement they had in Miami many years ago, which is coming on to about 6 years ago when they announced that they might announce something one day if they got around to it. And they haven't quite got to that one yet. But nonetheless, no, I think it's safe to congratulate the fans of Nashville for this. Now, One thing that if you read the online reaction, which is always a bad idea, but if you do, there is of course some pushback from other cities, and one of the big pushbacks is that Nashville has quote unquote no soccer history or no lower division history to note of. Can you sort of speak to that and talk to people that want to suggest that Nashville isn't a soccer town?
I mean, if someone says Nashville isn't a soccer town, the first thing I would point towards is the people the crowds that showed up for Tottenham versus Man City in July, and then a couple weeks before that showed up for the U.S. Gold Cup match, and that show up for numbers of international friendly matches. So I mean, I think it's two different things. But I think for folks that don't know a lot about Nashville's soccer history, we've actually had soccer for a long time in different leagues. I mean, throughout the history of U.S. soccer. I mean, for decades we've had soccer teams. This particular soccer club, Nashville Soccer Club, has its roots in Nashville Football Club, which was a member-owned, supporter-owned club that was founded in 2013, and they played in NPSL for a few years, and then had the opportunity to move to USL beginning this coming spring. So the team has had, or the city has had soccer for a long time. There's a lot of grassroots support for soccer, lots of collegiate soccer, club soccer. So it may not be on everybody's radar as a soccer town, but I think you see in the turnout and in the support for the club as it's pushed towards MLS. I think you see that it's for sure a soccer market.
Newton, Nashville as a sports city, it's still brand new to us. It's about 15, 16 years old that Nashville is recognized as a sports city before the Houston Oilers of National Football League moved to Tennessee to become the Titans. There was no professional team ever in Nashville. Now, since the Oilers moved to... Sorry, go ahead.
It depends on... I would say there wasn't top flight sports.
Sure.
But you've had hockey in Nashville since the mid-'60s. The Titans came here in 1997. It's been about 20 years.
It's been 20 years already? Geez, world.
And then the Preds are actually, or maybe 1996. The Predators are 20 years old. I mean, we don't have the history of the Leafs.
Nobody does. Well, except the Habs.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at the Preds, that was my point, Newton, is the Preds and the Tennessee Titans is their success, not just on the ice or on the pitch or on their playing surface, in the stands, in the city. The buzz that professional teams were able to create in the city are one of the reasons behind why there's an announcement today. How important is the vibrant growth of the city for their sports team?
Excuse me. I think that the growth of the city supports sports. I think that it's kind of a glove and hand thing for me. Like the sports make the city frankly more attractive for people. I don't know that you're going to move to a city because the Predators are good, but it's like as an entertainment option. It's something to consider. But the city's growth, I think, reflects. A team's ability to pull in free agents. Nashville's a great city. It's a growing city. It's a diverse city. And I think we saw this spring and I guess into summer, we saw how the city rallied around the Predators with the Stanley Cup run. And if there's one thing Nashville can do, you guys, it's throw a party. And we threw a damn party for 10 weeks as we went 9-2 in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the streets were filled with people. I mean, like 150,000 people shutting down the entertainment district around Bridgestone Arena, and you wouldn't have seen that 20 years ago. You wouldn't have seen that 10 years ago. So I think it speaks to Nashville's development as not just a sports market, but as a more diverse sports savvy market, if you will. That it's not just football and baseball. Well,
you mentioned diversity, and that's one thing I think changed a lot in Nashville over the last 2 decades. Is Nashville opening itself up to the world? Yes, it's Music City. It's where a lot of people came in to find success or find love or find job or find whatever they're looking for. But now with the up and coming of the city and with the brand new teams and a lot of big athletes, and of course I have to mention the name because I'm from Montreal, and whenever I see the name Nashville, I have to say PK. Exactly. I miss PK. I truly do, and I haven't watched the Habs game since then. But the Roadies, can you talk to us about a bit about the Roadies, Newton, the president of the Roadies, the independent supporters club for what could be Nashville SC? How did the Roadies come to be?
Really, the history of the Roadies, it mirrors the history of Nashville Soccer Club, Nashville Football Club. When the club was founded in 2013, beginning play in 2014, it was member-owned, and the members, basically the owners, if you will, were the supporters group, and that turned into the Roadies. It was, founded by guys that now work for the club, and people that don't work for the club. But the two are pretty well linked, if you will. So we kind of joke and say, well, we've been trying to get people addicted to soccer in Nashville for 5 years. It's just taken us a little time. As a supporters group, we like to lean on and try to honor the tradition of what soccer clubs can be for a city, what soccer clubs can be for a community. So our goal is to not just support the club and be loud and passionate in the stands, but also be loud and passionate about Nashville and about supporting our community. So we just became a 501c3 nonprofit so that we can raise money to do things like send kids to soccer camp or send soccer balls to Haiti or things like that. It's still kind of early for us as we figure out what we can do, but we really want to support the club, not just in the stands, but support the club and support the city through charitable efforts and I'd say off the pitch efforts as well.
Newton, just as a quick aside before my question, really the Nashville Tourism Board should hire all of the Canadian hockey reporters to work for them because they still haven't shut up about the party that was going on for the Stanley Cup final run.
Duane, I was sent text yesterday by colleagues that work in the hockey world here. It's like, Kevin, I hope you get a chance to go to Nashville whenever they get a chance because that'll be the best day of your life. So there you go.
Yeah, I think Nashville. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, finish thought.
Well, I think Nashville. I don't know that. I mean, people obviously knew about Nashville before the NHL All-Star Game in 2016 or 2015. Gosh, everything kind of blends together. I guess it was 2016. But that really put, for a lot of the sports media, I think that put Nashville on the map because we did as a city, we did what we've done for music events and entertainment type events forever. We threw a party and it was awesome. And like you guys are saying, people from all over the world, or at least North America, came out of Nashville after the NHL All-Star Game saying, yeah, this place is legit. This place is awesome. And I think that helped to build momentum. Honestly, I think it helped to build it for soccer. Because it put it on the radar as more than just a football market. So I think the growth of Nashville in the soccer market probably owes a little bit of debt to the growth of Nashville as a hockey market.
I've drawn that comparison myself, not being from outside, so I'm glad to hear you say it. But I want to ask you about the stadium project, and just want you to sort of give an outline of what exactly it will be. Sort of explain it to those that might have a little bit of understanding of Nashville and those that might not have any. Just sort of describe what it's going to be and where it's going to be and how, where that fits into the city.
So the stadium is slotted to go at the historic Nashville Fairgrounds. I've heard a lot of talk in the last couple of days about that it's not a downtown stadium. The way that, and it's true, but it's very, very close to downtown. And with the way Nashville is growing, it probably won't feel like a downtown stadium for a couple of years. But the downtown district and Nashville's kind of connecting from downtown out away, but also from the more outlying areas towards downtown. So it's only a couple of miles from downtown. The renderings that I've seen are gorgeous. The stadium will have a roof. I mean, not a roof that covers the pitch, but the stands will be covered stands. It looks like it's got nice sight lines from when you walk into it. You can see from the concourse as you walk into the venue, you'll actually be able to see the pitch. They're talking about putting in entertainment and businesses, a mixed-use development in the area, which I think is important for the area itself, as it sits in Nashville, but just for an entertainment district. I think we've seen when there's things to do around a stadium, people go there on days that aren't game days. And when the stadium's kind of away from downtown or there's nothing to do there, if there's something happening at the arena or the stadium, there's nothing going on. But back to Nashville's venue, it'll be mixed use, soccer first, but we'll be able to support other events, concerts. I think it will be able to match football dimensions, but don't. Well, you can quote me on that because we're live, but I may be wrong on that. But it's in an area of town that's really starting to turn over. I think it's a strategic move by the city planners to put it where they are to just help continue Nashville's development.
It's always interesting to me when a team comes into a market that often the sports media and the media in general is a little bit behind the general population in terms of their acceptance of soccer. So I am curious what your media reaction's been there. Is it generally positive, or do you have some curmudgeons that are, still talking about diving Europeans and all those sort of cliches, or how's the reaction been?
It's been, I don't disagree with you. And all I could do is compare it back to hockey. And there was a lot of guys, like old guard media guys, that were like, well, this isn't football. I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that with soccer. I don't read tons of newspaper writers, but all the coverage that I do see is really positive. And, the questions are, I think for every new sports franchise, like, are the fans going to show up after the newness wears off? And I think you're going to see that in coverage for any market. But the coverage that we've seen is generally really positive. I think that probably is due, at least in some part, to the fact that the club has local ownership, almost exclusively local ownership, and it's guys that are well known and well respected in the city. And then I think that the club has gone about business the right way in gaining grassroots support. And then on top of that, I think that just Nashville's performance as a market for U.S. international matches, the Tottenham City match, things like that. I think it starts to, or has paved the way for sports reporters, sports media, to not want to turn their nose up at it.
You mentioned the team and the next few months, and it's going to be the off season, and we're going to know more about it today. But before the first ball is being kicked around in Nashville, what is the mentality that the future technical director you would like him to have to fill the stands? Does Nashville as a market need DPs 3 to start, and names that are recognizable to fill the stand, to start this project with a bang? Or do you need a good coach, pragmatism, and trying to build your team for the next 3-4 years? How do you see the beginning of the first offseason for Nashville heading into their training camp in about 2, 3, 4 years, whatever is the case?
Sure. I think that it's got to be a mix. I think that the team needs to play attractive soccer. I also know that winning sells tickets, or believe that winning sells tickets. But I think initially, what I would like to see, and I don't know what Gary Smith, our coach and technical director, I don't know what his plans are. I haven't talked with him about it. But what I would like to see is smart soccer that tends to be attractive. I would like to not see us playing a defensive shell or an empty bucket just for 90 minutes. But I also think you used the word pragmatic. I think understanding that as a first-year club that we're going to have to build something, and that we're probably not going to be. Atlanta United's a special case. I think they did a lot of things right and, caught fire. And if we could do that, well, yeah, that's fantastic. But for me, I can be okay with pretty attractive, smart soccer that gets results where they can, knowing that we're building towards the future and that we're seeing progress.
Now, before we say goodbye today, Newton, I want to change gears for a second, and I want to talk to you about another of your teams, one that you are seen in this picture that we have of you right now, wearing the kit of...
Oh, you're not... Okay, that's fine.
Tottenham. We've got to talk about Tottenham for a second. What's going on in Tottenham? Where did your love for this club start, and what's happening this year?
Well, what was happening this year... before the last 5 weeks was fantastic. But I a few years ago, and it's not lost on me that you guys are City fans. Or well, Duane
Duane's a City fan. I'm Chelsea.
So yeah, I thought this might come up. But yeah, a friend of mine, and I hiked across northern England with a friend a few summers ago, and had always followed soccer and enjoyed soccer. But I'm in my early 40s, and after I left college, where I was a soccer fan, there wasn't a lot of soccer to watch on television. So I, watched where I could and found matches on TV when I could, but never considered myself a supporter of any team. And then when we hiked across England, I thought, well, now that I've been here, I have to pick a club. And I'm lucky. I almost wound up a Newcastle fan because that's where we spent a couple of days.
Lucky you.
But I was watching, lucky me. It's a fun city to have a few pints in. I wouldn't want to be I'm glad I'm not a Newcastle fan. But no, I got home from that trip and was just watching Premier League one Saturday on television and thought, golly, who is this team in white just bombing the pitch with reckless abandon? That's my team. That's who I want to follow. And it turned out that it was Spurs. And as I would watch matches, but also thought, well, I need to know about the history of the club. So as I started reading about the history of the club, I just identified with so much about the mentality, to dare is to do and echoes of glory. I own a business and have owned a climbing gym here in Nashville for about 10 years. And just that kind of devil may care, like we're going to go out and do it. It resonated with me. So yeah, it's not a long history for me, but it's passionate.
That's what it
which
counts.
Also means that the last few weeks have kind of sucked.
Thank you very much for your time today, Newton. You can follow Newton and the Roadies. Let me just make sure that I have the right Twitter handle at NSC Roadies is the handle for the group. You can follow Newton as well on Twitter. Newton, thank you very much for your time today, and enjoy it. Enjoy the announcement today.
Sure thing, guys. Look forward to seeing you down in Nashville. We'll take you out and get you some beers.
Let's go to Smashville, Duane.
Awesome.
You mind if we hear some tunes? Hey, that'll work. You got any Christmas music? This is Christmas music.
December 24th on Hollis Ave at the dark, when I seen a man chilling with his dog at the park. I approached him very slowly with my heart full of fear. Looked at his dog, oh my God, a ill reindeer.
And I just want to take this opportunity to wish all of our listeners a very happy holiday season from the Two Solitudes and the Five Rings podcast. From both myself and Kevin, we wish you all the best.
They don't make Christmas songs like they used to, Duane.
May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Ron DMC. I watched Die Hard last night. It was my first time this year that I watched it, and God, it's so good.
I haven't watched Die Hard this year yet. Good school. I almost feel that we should have played something with a little bit of a country twang there after Nashville. Although Nashville, for those that don't know, there's a lot more music in Nashville than just this country. But there's a lot of good country there too, if you like that sort of thing.
Just put it this way: Shania changed a lot of things in the '90s. When Shania moved to Nashville, a lot of things changed, and then Carrie came on, and Carrie Underwood and company. Nashville is a lot more diverse than the image of our minds of 30, 40 years ago when it was country and nothing else. Now it's a cosmopolitan city. It's a cosmopolitan area now.
Yeah, look, I was in Nashville in the 90s. I traveled through the South quite a bit, and at a certain stage in my life in the 90s, I spent about 3 months down there. And I'd spent some time in Nashville, and my memory of it was fun even then, but what I saw during the Stanley Cup final and heard about it seems like it's like exponentially, rowdier and funner and hipper and all that sort of jazz, because it really was kind of, there's no diplomatic way to put this, kind of like, the Wonder Bread back then. You could have some beers and watch a football game, but it wasn't necessarily going to be that same kind of vibe that you were getting during what you're seeing now on TV, at least. And certainly hearing from people that I know that have been down there, it's quite the town and quite the party now.
To put it nicely, it was a very homogenized. back then. Now it's reflecting of our society of today, which is very different, heterogenized, and it's a little bit for everyone. And I think that's why soccer is going to be a success there, because there is a portion of the fans, we used to say the 18 to 34, but I think we need to change that the demographic, and I think it's going to be the 10 to 45, right? That's your fan base. Doesn't matter if it's men or women. It's like 10 to 77 will be the fan base of the Nashville Soccer Club, whatever it's called. And I feel like there's a lot of potential here. Yes, Nashville is a city that came out of nowhere. Like 3 years ago, if you would have asked me, oh, who's going to have a team in Major League Soccer, Nashville was not even on my radar. But a lot of progress were made over the last few years and few months. And, well, we didn't talk about this in the interview, or at least not a lot. But there's one big factor in the fact that Nashville is going to be named today as a Major League Soccer club. A truck full of money, of public money, to build a stadium. That's important.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Look, it's about the stadium, stupid, to paraphrase Bill Clinton, right? It really always is, and the ownership group too, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute there. Now, you mentioned like the success of the Predators, and I do think that played a role. Absolutely. I think the MLS executives seeing that on TV this past year, and you know, they're down in New York, not far away from NHL headquarters. I'm sure that they talk to each other, sports executives, and you know, in different sports. I'm sure that they run in the same circles, so they would have kind of the same report. So I don't think it was not a factor, but it was a minor factor compared to the two other aspects that you just spoke of, the stadium and the ownership group. And that is, you know, absolutely what it is. They were the first of these expansion groups to really get a concrete plan, not quite shovels in the ground, but shovels ready to go into the ground with all the money lined up. For those that don't know, it's about $250 million that this project's going to cost. It's one of those land development deals where the ownership group gets a whole bunch of land that they can then, you know, use to develop for their own needs. So that's kind of where the subsidy comes in, combined with a loan that will be paid back over many years by the municipality. So both sides can kind of argue that you know, the group, the ownership group can argue that they're privately financing it, even though they're doing it, you know, with a major loan that they wouldn't get otherwise. And the city can argue that it's not publicly financed because it's a loan. But it's one of those deals.
Well, let's call a spade a spade. It's money that's been given or loaned by the city, anyways. So it's kind of fitting. But that leads us to the next one. We've talked about Sacramento, Detroit, and Cincinnati. Those are the three choices left in the 4 finalist cities that were announced a few months ago. Nashville is going to be named today, allegedly. There's a very, very high probability it's going to happen today. But who's the next one, Duane? Cincinnati, Detroit, Sacramento. We'll know maybe more next year.
Yeah, there were reports out of Cincinnati yesterday that the next announcement is going to come in January, that there is going to be a bit of a delay between now. And then part of that's going to be the holidays, for sure. I mean, they want to spread these announcements out. You don't want to take any attention away from one city before you announce the other one. And that makes sense. So they're always going to split them up. Like, why announce? Like, I saw on Twitter people arguing, well, why not announce them both at the same time? Well, you got to promote them, and you got to give your city a chance to shine and be the only spotlight for one day, right? Like, there's no mystery or conspiracy.
You got to give chance to the company to make the damn scarves. Like, you can't just call and be like, give me 25 FC Cincinnati MLS scarf for tomorrow. We're having a press conference. Takes time to knit, you know, so maybe that's one of the reasons why they need the announcement to be pushed back in January too.
Fair enough. And I was poking around yesterday looking for bookings in Cincinnati to see if I could find anything through backdoor stuff, but unfortunately my Sherlock Holmes radar wasn't working completely. I couldn't find any evidence of anything anywhere, and I'm sure they hide that stuff pretty well. The days of us being able to track like airline flights or look for hotel bookings are slowly slipping away because people are catching on to those ways of reporting now, which is unfortunate because it was always kind of fun.
But then I'm going to send a little message to our friends who work at Soccer Scarves and other places that we know make scarves. Maybe you have an order on your desk that tells you more. You know how to reach us.
Yeah, or the trademark registrations are always a fun way to look at it too. Nonetheless,
Speaking of trademarks,
I do routinely search trademark rotations.
Duane, speaking of trademarks, this has nothing to do with soccer, or well, kind of. The XFL might be coming back. That's what trademarks would tell you. XFL was given a new trademark a few years ago, so that's kind of interesting. That will be fun for our TV shows. But no, you're right. Looking at trademarks sometimes give us some indication of what's to come, or at least an ideas or possibilities. Websites, when you have websites, domain name being licensed and registered, same for copyrights and logo designs. That's a good place to start.
Oh, for sure. But to take this back on the topic, there's no mystery in the fact that they're going to delay this into the new year. Now, if they delay it into February, then I think there's something going on. And what I think's going on is that they're trying to get one of their groups to get something in order before they announce. That would be what that means. But until we get maybe another month into this, I'm not going to read too much into this. But who's going to be next was the question you asked. And I asked that to our listeners just in a real quick poll that I put out on my Twitter account before, and it was retweeted by the Soccer Today SPN, which is at Soccer Today SPN, if you want to follow the show itself, which doesn't have enough followers. So give that a click if you haven't already. Look, right now our listeners, are universally, almost universally, decisively picking Cincinnati as the next team, and at 75% of the people that have responded to this poll have picked Cincinnati over 16% Sacramento and 9% other. You mentioned Detroit as the likely other. Detroit's problem really is that they've tied it into the NFL stadium. The ownership group, pretty good there. They've got Mr. Gilbert from Cleveland. Well, he's from Detroit, but he owns the Cavs. Yeah. So that's a pretty big name.
And the owner of the Detroit Lions now is part of that group too, which is probably the biggest sports owner name in the Detroit area. So.
For sure. Now that Mr. Illich has passed away, certainly the most well-known one. But look, Detroit is a market that they definitely would like in, and we've talked a lot about that. And I do believe that when you're looking at the other two markets there, and not to belabor this point, but they're not as sexy. They're not as market, and they're not as big a TV market capture for them as the Detroit would be. And I think that really is something that is making MLS reluctant, particularly when you look at that Sacramento. And this is something that I've talked about for probably 3 years now, that I'm reluctant to suggest that Sacramento is anything close to a sure thing, because it's just not a sexy market for them. And that's not fair to the people of Sacramento. And I completely agree with them, and I completely agree with their frustrations. I am absolutely on their side in this argument, but I'm not going to shy away from stating the fact that I still don't think they're a sure thing. I think they're, to use the analogy that I used on Twitter and I spoke to Kevin this morning about, they're the Quebec Nordiques in Major League Soccer. What I mean by that is that they're there in their back pocket if they ever need one, but they're reluctant to jump in with both feet until they have to.
What's the law of offer and demand, right? The more you got an offer, the less demand becomes popular. Or the more you demand something, the price goes up with the offer because they know you want it that bad. Does the fact that Sacramento want a team that badly and been acting to have that team really badly over the last 3-4 years with the attendance at their stadium over 16,000, we've seen great games here in Sacramento with the Republic. Is it because they want a team that badly that MLS in itself knows they can? We can maybe get them a little angry. We can make them wait a bit because, well, we know they want it that badly. Let's try to convince somebody else first.
Yeah, well, they've taken them for granted is what you're suggesting. Is it's possible. There is, I think, as we talked about a minute ago, it's about the stadium stupid. They have a good stadium thing there, but it's also about the ownership stupid. And I could call people stupid. It's probably rude, but we all know I'm paraphrasing. It's about the economy stupid by Bill Clinton, which is a very famous saying. If you don't know that, if you're too young to know that, then God, I'm old.
Bill who? Bill Clinton? I don't know. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
the saxophone player. Okay.
Yes, exactly. God, the 90s. There you go. Look, yeah, a couple people, Evan Ream, who's been on the show many, many times, and Kartik, who's been on the show many, many times, were both reporting yesterday that there might be some issues with their ownership and that the depth of their pockets of their ownership, which is making MLS reluctant to commit to them, as well as the market issues that I've spoken of before. Again, this would be unfortunate, but look, if there's smoke, there's fire, right? And if Sacramento was something that they were desperate to get into, they would be there already. Sacramento would have got in before Atlanta, before Minnesota, had they really taken this fan base, the fans aspect of it seriously. And I think that, those of us on the fan or closer to the fan side or on the fan side tend to look at the big crowds and think that they're the biggest factor involved. They're just simply not. And that may not sit well with those of you that are closer to the pro-rel traditional market of, non-franchise kind of thinking out there. But the reality is you can't handicap an expansion race unless you come to grips with the idea that stuff is a factor, just like the Preds playoff run was a factor. And in fact, I would argue, to tie this back into Nashville, that the Nashville Predators getting those big crowds and that vibrant sort of atmosphere around the stadium has every bit as much influence as Sacramento Republic selling out soccer games. And that is going to rub people the wrong way, but I believe that they're kind of equal. They kind of wash each other out in
more than that,
how they evaluate these things.
I think, Duane, you have a point here, and I think you're more right than you can think. Bridgestone just re-signed for another 20 years for the naming right of that arena. Companies are willing to sign endorsement and sponsorship and marketing deals with the Predators, with teams from Tennessee, a lot more than before. And I think that's another reason why Nashville is going in today, is the abilities of Nashville itself to attract CEOs, companies, big money, to attract conventions now, to attract all those corporate world thingies, if you permit the expression, that will lend a team to better sponsorship deals, better marketing deals, like a better footprint. It's not about only the attendance. It's about the luxury boxes. It's about can you create an industry? Can you create an actual economy with the sports team and sports franchise that's coming to your team, to your city? So there's a lot of factors involved, and all those corporate factors involved in Nashville now as well, I think explains a lot of the situation, and explains as well why Sacramento might never have a team. Sacramento, capital of California, but when you're looking at the capital itself, it's not in Sacramento. There's some head offices, right? There's some skyscrapers. There's a city downtown. There's just some money there, but it's not the same as you would have a little more south in California. So there's a lot of components that will dictate if they do or not get a team.
It's the Ottawa, California. It's a government town that has some vibrant sort of, Ottawa. I like Ottawa. That's not an insult to Ottawa. I actually enjoy my time in Ottawa every time I'm there, and there's a lot more culture and a lot more vibrancy than any people give it credit for. The market's a great place to go. So this isn't an insult. They've got a lot of great people there, but the reality is, from a perspective side, optics for the perspective is reality, right? It's just not the same, and it's viewed kind of as a bland government town. You talked about Sacramento's bigger. Like, there's more people that live in Sacramento than there lives in Nashville. But from the perspective of a national business leader, as Kevin just said, which city's more interesting to them? It's Music City, for God's sakes. That's where they're going to want to, if I'm going to throw my money towards this Nashville team, and 4 or 5 times a year, they're going to fly me down as a corporate partner, and I'm going to party on their entertainment district, and I'm going to, have a great time and wake up, with my head still spinning, but like with a smile on my face because of the night I had before. That's just not the reputation of places like that. And as much as maybe sometimes reputations are overstated, and sometimes maybe, some people may think there's too much hipster going on here, that this is more about, trends rather than reality. But the perception is reality, as I just said, and they're more likely to attract that corporate money. And I think it's a better, to MLS's corporate eyes, through MLS's corporate eyes, it's a better fit for them, and that's why Nashville's getting in. Plus, well, partly, but mostly because they have the money and they have the stadium in place, and that's the bottom line there. Kevin, should we talk a little bit about the Save the Crew stuff and the potential of that being blocked, or do you want to save that for Friday?
I just want to take a little break. Let's just take a small break, and when we come back, we will talk a bit about what could be happening with PSV and the city of Columbus.
All the money in the cash register, Mr. Duncan is going to donate to the Children's Hospital.
At midnight tonight, we're hitting Duncan's toy chest.
You can mess with a lot of things. You can't mess with kids on Christmas.
Christmas is here 5 days. Yeah, I need to go shopping again. Didn't have a chance yesterday.
I'm leaving here to go shopping after the show today.
Me too.
Anyway.
Me too. PSV. And no, I'm not talking about the team from Eindhoven in the Netherlands, but I'm talking about Precourt Sports Ventures versus the city of Columbus. There's a ballondorder.com, a new website that you can have a little bit of the law side of football you can find on there. There's a podcast as well. It's by a friend of the show, Elizabeth Cotignola, which we say hello, La Diavolina. Buongiorno. We love her work, and one of the articles that was published yesterday was talking about this obscure law that was made in Ohio after the Cleveland Browns left in the late 90s to move to Baltimore and become the champions just a few years after moving. But that law came into effect. And the gist of the law is if you receive tax money, tax credits, money from the city, then you have a certain protocol to use before you can move the team out of the city. A 6-month procedural aspect to give other ownership groups in the city chance to maybe buy the team. A 6-month warning to city officials, look, we're thinking of this. Anyways, there's a few points in this law that could be contradictory to what Precourt Sports Ventures has been doing over the last few months. So it'll be interesting to see if that law can actually maybe save the Crew.
Yeah, and look, I think that Crew fans are right to be a little bit not skeptical, but cautious about buying in full to this. But this certainly is something that's out there and a legal procedure that the city may try to use to keep them there. It's because I think there is some clear evidence, and we're seeing this through and through, that Precourt would argue that if they did try and enforce this law, he would argue that he has given them 6 months notice. But if you look at, the argument that the city would get back is whether or not he's legitimately been trying to sell the team, whether he's legitimately willing to negotiate in a fair and equitable way. And there's some evidence I would suggest, and I'm not a lawyer, as anyone who knows me would know, but I would suggest that there's at least an argument to be made that he is not really in good faith, I think would be the term that he would use, negotiated with anyone to sell this team, and his intentions have been since 2013 when he purchased this team to find a way to move them to Austin. And if they could prove that, then yeah, there's a chance that they can enforce this law. Now, this article goes on to explain that there's further complication to that, though, that even if they were to successfully argue that, then there might be a counter law, national law, federal law, that in turn might, render that not a law that they can enforce, basically, because you can't prevent, the competitive movement of a franchise, basically. I'm oversimplifying this because I'm not a lawyer, but basically there's a couple laws, and there's a lot of gray here, like there always is with the law, but certainly this is another mechanism that's out there to try and fight off this move that, everyone except, it seems, the people directly involved that have the power to do it seem to be opposed to.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we'll see if something comes out of this, but at least it gives a bit of hope to fans of the Columbus Crew that maybe in litigation form there's something that can be done by the city of Columbus if those threats by Precourt Sports Ventures turned out to be real. So that's something. Another thing that happened yesterday, Duane, and we can mention on the top really quickly, is the opening. See, the season openers have been announced in Major League Soccer. The Montreal Impact will start their season on March 4th in Vancouver Toronto FC will start their season at home, outside, the beginning of March. It'll be cold, but then they're moving to Montreal on St. Patrick's Day for the Montreal Impact home opener on March 17th. There's a few games on March 17th. It will be quite an impression. It will be fun. It'll be blurry. It'll be a little bit hoppy, but it'll be a fun St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, well, yeah, St. Patrick's there'll be about, it's Big O, so there's going to be about 2,000 Torontonians in Montreal on St. Patrick's Day. This is going to go perfectly well, I'm sure. At any
there
rate,
won't be any problems. Nobody will be drunk, right? Nobody will go to the stadium hammered. Nah. Maybe that's why the games I won
will not be packed to the gills.
But that's the thing, though. The games I won, it's even worse. Don't do the game in the afternoon. People are morning drinking on that day. They'll be done at noon. Do the game at 1? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm lucky I'm in the press box.
The game will be anyway. Yes, it's going to be fun. Look, the only they always do this every year. Like the Canadian teams, there's going to be a Canadian derby in the opening day every year, and I'm not entirely sure why they do that, because those games are going to sell out regardless. So why would you waste that? Why not? Like we've seen in Toronto, our home opener's been against Kansas City a couple times, and that makes sense, because that's especially in those lean years when TFC wasn't necessarily going to sell out. Like you could put in my USL team and they'd sell out the TFC home opener this year because they're the defending champions and people are excited. So why waste it?
Well, you put the Derby in Montreal in the Big O, you get 50,000 people, you make some money off of that game. I think you just got your answer why it's happening in Montreal on March 17th.
I suppose, yeah. And I think it's going to be a semi-annual tradition that Montreal and Toronto are going to play on that second week of the season, because they typically put Montreal's home opener around there because they can play in the Big O. They're delaying it a little bit. You might argue, why don't they put the actual home opener on March 3rd in the Big O? But as we've said many times before, they are making some changes to that roof, if I'm correct. But
the changes to the roof are not necessarily done arguing. It's not official. The actual works as well is in the tower itself. There's about 2,000 government worker and bank workers that are going to move in there in the next few years. So there's a lot of work going on in the actual Big O on the structures. They're reinforcing the structures, there's like a crane who's been sticking out of the Big O for a year and something. It's the biggest crane in North America for the last year and a half. A lot of work going to the Big O, the structure, to solidify it, and eventually there is the possibility of having a new roof, a new dome, kind of. And the last few options was like what the BC Place in Vancouver used to have, inflatable domes, or like the Metrodome. Was it the Metrodome in back then in Minnesota? I think it was, where you had this big inflatable roofs, right? That you can, if you need be, take out. It takes a few days, but example, you built that new roof at the Big O, and you got that inflatable roof, and now it's available to be used year round. And then you get a World Cup in 2026, and you need to do one game in Montreal or two, and you need a grass surface, and you need an open air stadium. Well, you take that inflatable roof off, you put some grass in there, and you got yourself a decent stadium for the World Cup. So I think all those decisions in the next few years are all related. But yes, there's probably going to have an inflatable roof, or like kind of roof.
Something.
Big O. Yeah, something that will close it.
Won't worry about this. Something that we won't worry about the snow,
killing
piling
people
on and
yes.
collapsing. Yeah, exactly. So at any rate, that's why they're not going to play there. But March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, as we said, which is actually the Vancouver Whitecaps' first ever game was on St. Patrick's Day, and I know this because I was at it, and it was against Toronto, and that was a fun day in Vancouver. So I'm going to spend St. Patrick's Day in another major city in Canada. That'll be kind of fun. All right, and obviously I'm going to go to the second game of the year because it's the second game of the year. But the first game of the year for the first time ever is going to be at the BMO Field, which sort of eliminates any possibility that they're not going to play the CCL game there. There was some people that were holding on to this idea that they would try and play the CCL game against the Colorado Rapids. Jesus, why? They were going to play that.
Such an exotic team, right? It's you had Joe Public, Real Esteli, and City, and Indiana, and the Colorado Rapids. It's kind of not exotic at all.
Oh, anyway, yeah. So that's going to be at BMO Field for sure. A few days before that, so it's going to be. It's unbelievable that they were going to be at BMO Field twice in a week in the end of February, early March. That's wacky, but regardless, that's something that's going to be a fun way. And it's weird to think that the season just ended and it's already, only a couple months away before we'll be back there.
Couple months? Duane, 5 weeks before training camp's open. And I'm not even exaggerating. It's less than that.
Well, the draft's in 3? And anyway,
there you go. I've seen New York City FC tweet 72 days. Like, that's before the first game of the season. It's crazy.
So real quickly though, I tweeted this out for those that are wondering what the weather will be like in Toronto on March 3rd for that outdoor game. And look, I was saying this to people, Americans mostly, in the lead up to the MLS Cup, that early December in Toronto is a lot more realistic. And this is why the winter schedule idea that people float around is not realistic at all, is because in early December, you could play games here, and it wasn't that bad MLS Cup final night. I mean, I'm sure Southern Americans thought it was, but nonetheless, for us up here, it was livable. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't anything like the year before, which is about as bad as you could get. But early March, late February, in early February, playing there would be nasty in ways that you cannot comprehend unless you're from here. The average temperature over the last 5 years, I just ran this. It's called Weather Underground. You can check the temperature of any date for the last, I think it's 17 years or something you can track. So the average temperature over the last 5 years in Toronto on March 3rd was -6 this year, -6 the year before, -4 the year before that, -14. This is Celsius, by the way. The year before that, and then -4 again.
-14 Celsius Fahrenheit kind of becomes the same at that point.
It's getting closer at that point, but it's all pretty nasty.
It's cold. It's cold.
And the point all these temperatures make is that if you looked at the same temperature range in this early December, you'd get a few plus days in there. You'd get some bad days and you get some good days. The range is better, but in the fall, because there's more warmth in the water, there's more warmth in the air still, it's just more likely to still be somewhat mild. Whereas by the time we go through a dead of winter in this country, our early springs are not nice. So it's going to be a challenge to play in there. But I'm glad and happy to finally see a home opener, a league openers weekend in Toronto. I think after this will be the 12th season, it's about time that they gave it a chance anyway, and even if it is tied into the CCL.
All right. Tomorrow, there's no soccer today. Tomorrow is Thursday. We're going to record a 5 Rings Road to Pyeongchang later on during the day. So about just before the evening, just before supper time, Duane and I will record 5 Rings. So if you like our Olympic Focus podcast, I suggest you give a listen to us live on our YouTube channel and available everywhere you get your podcasts. After, we'll be talking a lot again about the Russian doping aftermath. The last few weeks has not been kind. In a way, things needed to happen, but a lot of things have been going on with Gymnastic USA, Gymnastic Canada, which... Anyways, it's another important show tomorrow for 5 Rings. So I urge you to give it a listen if you can. And Duane, as always, Duane, you can be followed at 24th Minute. Myself at Kev Laramee. And until Friday, 10 a.m. for another Soccer Today. As always, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.